Our next guest is a friend of John Winning's. He's an Australian entrepreneur who's been innovating for years, challenging the business landscape with disruptive models that help Australians succeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Bouris.
This is not because I'm probably the oldest person to speak to you over the next couple of days. Just that I couldn't see that because it's glass or plastic, and I didn't see it. I thought I got nowhere to rest my phone and my bottle, so I brought it out myself. So thanks very much for staying, because I know it's getting on in the day, and it's been quite an exciting day for you guys. My topic, well, before I talk about my topic, give you my topic headline. I just wanted to say, when I was listening to the previous speaker, I started thinking about what she was talking about, and I started thinking about myself, as we all do. And I'm reminded of what happened when after my first marriage broke up. I've been married 3 times, not that successful in private life. And a lot of these discussions and talks with you guys is about success. When success doesn't cut across every part of everybody's life. And sometimes success is, in some parts of your life, it's got to be sacrificed for success in other parts of my life. But during the break, you have things aren't getting on well, and someone suggests, usually your mum or your dad or her parents suggest you go and talk to a therapist, or go together. And I was talking to the particular individual, and he said, first they see you on your own, then they see you together. And he said, and we had a number of counselling sessions, and he said to me, Mark, you ever thought to yourself about seeing a psychiatrist? And I said, why? He said, well, I'm not sure. He said, because the previous speaker made me think of this. He said, you could be a psychopath. And so I actually booked in an appointment with a psychiatrist. But I thought, before I go, I'm going to be well prepared. So I remember I went and bought a book by a guy called Ron, R-O-N, Johnson, J-O-N-S-O-N, who wrote a book, and it was called The Psychopath Test. And of course, he went through all the various tests, and there's a test called the hair test. Any psychologists in the room? No. Okay, then I can lie through my teeth. No, I'm just joking. But the hair test, H-A-R-E, is a test where they give you 20 questions, you answer these 20 questions, and they give you a score out of so much. And generally speaking, it indicates your psychopathy. And I did the test, but what I really wanted to do was be well prepared for what the psychiatrist is going to ask me. So I wanted to try and hack or manipulate the outcome. And I didn't do I didn't go too bad. He did diagnose me with something completely different, but nonetheless, I didn't come out as a psychopath. Now, I may well have been, because when I think about myself as a young man, a lot of you people here are young people, a young man in business, I was impulsive. I was focused, over-focused with my task at hand. And my task at hand was always about being successful in business. I was impressed easily with what I saw, what others had, what I wanted, what I didn't have. And I was driven to the extent you could probably call me obsessive. And I was obsessed with the outcomes, and I didn't have a mentor in my life. No, it just didn't happen. My parents met in Australia. One's Irish, one's Greek. They never really, weren't properly educated for all the usual reasons. They grew up in the 30s and 40s, 1930s, 1940s. So, all the obvious stuff. So I didn't, when I say I didn't, I had great parents, but they didn't know what to say, what to do, what to tell you to do. So, and a lot of these things, by the way, I'm telling you now, have shaped how I'm going to answer the topic today about, my topic being, how do you stay on top of your game? A lot of those things back then shaped who I am today. So if you're sitting here and you listen to me and you walk away and you go, or anybody for that matter, you walk away, wow, I'm never going to do that. Well, just give yourself a chance, because you will evolve. And today is an opportunity for you to learn and listen and see and think about stuff, and maybe you might go away with one good idea, one thing that may help you in your future. But don't be too hard on yourself, whatever you do. Don't be hard on yourself, because you're not thinking the way I'm going to talk about the way I think today. I wasn't a psychopath. I was always prepared. I was hardworking. I was ruthless in my thinking, ruthless in the outcomes I wanted to achieve. and to some extent, considered a bit of a hard ass. And as a result of that, that's why they recruited me for The Apprentice, the Celebrity Apprentice show. Because the people who produced the show, or the guy in Australia from Fremantle Media, who was the CEO of Fremantle Media at the time, knew me in my work environment. He thought I would suit that Donald Trump sort of psychopathic role based on what he knew about me as a business person, what he'd heard and seen. And I have to tell you today, standing here today, I'm not ashamed of that, but I don't see that as who I am today. And I'm proud of sort of what I've achieved in the past. You know, and now I was introduced as someone who sold a business in 2004 to General Electric. Yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of those big moments, huge moments, Wall Street Journal, the whole thing. But I'm not really proud of who I was then relative to who I want to be today. So when I say to you, I want to talk to you about how I stay on top of my game, and we've got to work out what is my game. Today, my objective is to live to 100 years old. I'm 67 years of age. I want to live to 100. And you might say, sure, everybody wants to live a long life. No, I've got a reason for that. My reason for living to 100 is because my father, who is now nearly 90 years of age, has obviously me, he has my son, or 4 sons, and he has my grandson. And I see every Saturday when I go to my father's house, go to my dad's house every Saturday, without fail, assuming I'm in the country or in the state, but I might usually speak, I'm always there. My sons come along, and my son who has a child, he comes along and he brings his son George, and the 4 of us sit there, and I see, it's not the joy he gives to me, it's not the joy he gives to little George, it's not the joy that he gives to Alex, my son, but it's the joy my father gets from seeing 3 generations before him or after him. So I figure, to me, that's probably the most important thing I can achieve in my life. So that's my objective. So when I define how do I stay at the top of my game, that's my game. Living to 100. That's another 33 years. At that point, my sons will be my age now, and my grandson will be their age now, and I will get to do what my father did now. So I want to tell you, therefore, how do I propose to do it? So I'm not talking about business, but all this, and I don't normally talk about this stuff, right? This is, I'm doing this as a favour for Herman, like John. He's my mate. I watched Herman grow up across the road we lived across the road from each other. He's friends with my kids. I know his dad really well. I know other members of his family. So I told him I will talk to you about something that I very rarely talk about. And normally I'm talking about business or doing straight talk with various guests, talking about Reserve Bank, talking about interest rates or whatever. I'm going to talk to you about stuff that's real for me, really important to me. The other stuff's important, but this is really important. So that's my objective. Clearly I have a purpose in life. My purpose in life, to be frank with you, is to learn. That's my purpose in life. My objective is different to my purpose. My purpose is for Mark Bouris to learn. And I do that through constant curiosity. Now these are things that I always did this. I did this as a younger man. I've always been that person. It's taken me a long time to work out who I was, but I was always curious as a kid, always curious as a teenager, early young man years, all my life. I'm curious. And that served me well, both in business and in normal life. But to be curious is not enough. You have to turn that into a learning process, whether it's success, learn from your successes or learn from your failures. So curiosity, learning. And I do that, or in order to do that, in order to execute on that, there's 3 non-negotiables. It's physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. Now, what do I mean by those things? Or how do they fit into my objective of getting to 100 from here? Well, I'll start off with physical health. What do I mean by physical health? Well, subject to genetics, and that I don't get some genetic disease or disorder. You can't avoid those things unless, some people say you can, but let's assume you can't for the moment. But subject to those things remaining equal, then how do I get the best out of my physical life relative to that? So what I want to, now if I say to myself, what I want to be able to do when I'm 100? What do I want to be able to do when I'm 95, 90, 85, 80, etc.? What do I want to do? Well, I want to be able to pick up my grandkids. I want to be able to bend down and pick them up when they're little and give them a hug and feel them. I want to be able to see properly. I want to be able to see everything that's important to see in relation to my grandkids. And hopefully one day, maybe great grandkids if I'm lucky. I want to be able to smell food. Food, we're a Greek family, food is a very important part of our life. It's extraordinarily important. I want to be able to smell well, taste properly. I want to be able to feel and touch my grandson. I want to touch his soft hair. I want to touch his soft skin. I want him to feel his grandfather, great-grandfather holding him up. And for him, I want him to feel safe and secure. I don't want him to feel, oh shit, grandpa's going to drop me. But that's a big deal. Because a grandfather or a great-grandfather, in my father's case, is very conscious of that. That the kid feels safe and secure. And by the way, a kid can read that in a second. And then I don't want my grandson backing off because he's not sure. And I don't want to be a scary looking dude, like so wrinkled up that I scare the bejesus out of him. I don't want to be that dude either. So it's important for me to physically maintain. I'm not going to grow muscles. I'm not interested in growing muscles. But I'm also equally not interested in getting fat. I'm also equally interested in keeping my strength. So how do I do that? Well, I'm a learner, as I'm curious. So I listen to lots of people. Probably my favourite one on this particular topic is Andrew Huberman. Anyone listen to Huberman Labs? Yeah, okay. That's good, eh? So, and you can clap him because he's not here, you're not going to hear it. He probably is watching this. But give Andrew Huberman a clap because I'm going to tell you something. He is a wonderful teacher. And I listen to, I go into the timestamps and I pick out the sections I want to listen to because it does go on for a few hours, but I listen to some experts. I listen to the experts he talks to about physical health, like training routines, for example, training regimes and routines. And one of the things that I gathered from that is that first and foremost, you've got to establish a baseline. So, and now your baseline will change. You could be going through a hard time. You might not have been able to train as often as you would like to have trained. You might have put a bit of weight on. It could be winter and you haven't been able to get there in time or whatever. Or you might be traveling a lot and you can't get to gyms, etc. But I like to establish a baseline and I have in my mind what my baseline is. So here's my baseline. Baseline in doing resistance work. Now, I'm not doing resistance work because I want to build muscle. I'm doing resistance work so I can keep my strength in my body. I can keep my bone structure strong, and that I can also be flexible with the same amount of strength. And the sort of regime that I try to seek out is to be able to lift my body weight in everything. Bench, dips, deadlifts, squats, military presses, rows, etc. There's 6 different exercises I do. So I do this with a passion. I don't go to the gym because I think, oh my God, I've got to go to the gym. I don't think that. I'm actually really curious to see, am I at that level? And if I'm not, why aren't I at that level? What's happened? What have you done? What can I reverse? What can I change? I'm not trying to get beyond that number. It doesn't matter to me if I could do 100 kilos, I'm 83 kilos. It doesn't matter if I can do 100 kilos. But if I can do that, and that's my benchmark, and that's what I'm going to try and continue to achieve, as long as I possibly can. I'm going to hang on to that as long as I possibly can. On top of that, I believe in, I love jiu-jitsu. I used to be a boxer, but I can't do that anymore because too many head knocks. And I will share with you, I've had a lot of concussions over the years, and some serious ones. And in the end, I just basically stopped myself from boxing and sparring and stuff like that. Because I worked out, this is only a couple of years ago, I worked out this is too dangerous. So, but I like to fight. I like the competition of fighting. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't necessarily like violence, but I like the competition of fighting. And I'll tell you why. I'll explain to you why. It makes you cognitively much better, assuming you're not getting hit in the head. And I'll tell you why that happens. You get put in positions that no one else can help you with. You're not sharing it with your mate who's helping you bench or whatever. You get put in positions where you have to respond. Now, sometimes you're gassed, you're fatigued, you find it difficult to get your brain, A, to recognize the position you're in, B, to tell you what the solution is, and 3, through the nervous system to make your muscles respond. And I will tell you now, as you get older, it gets harder and harder and harder. And I have a theory, I've got plenty of mates my same age. I have a theory that why a lot of my friends can't do some of the things I do is because the lack of use of the nervous system that's connected to the brain, if you don't use it, effectively you lose it. And it's a really important thing for me. I prosecute this 3 times a week. So now I do jiu-jitsu instead of boxing. And jiu-jitsu, for anyone here do jiu-jitsu? Grapple, what have you? And you know what I'm talking about, right? Someone's got you, in a position that they got you in control, they've got you in a control position, side control, whatever it is. And you've got to work out, okay, now how am I going to get out of this? And of course, if they're any good, they're working out, I know what he's going to try and do. And they're working 3 steps ahead of you. It's a bit like playing chess. So this develops your cognitive ability. For me, developing my physical ability alongside my cognitive ability at the same time is efficient. So I use this for my physical regime, weight work, resistance, and I do wrestling or grappling to coordinate. So physicality is about coordinating what's going on in here with what's going to be output there. So if I decide one day I want to pick my grandson up, and I have a grandson now, if I want to pick him up, I think I want to pick him up, I've got to know how to bend down properly, what position, how to hold him, how to pick him up, how to make him feel secure, how not to do my back in, how not to hurt my neck, how not to hurt my shoulders, how to put him back gently without hurting him, how to make sure that I don't look like a goose in front of everybody who might be watching, I don't trip over, I can carry him where he needs to be carried, etc., etc. So that's that objective that I talked about before. That's the first and foremost one is physicality. It's a physical objective, really important. The next one I said was mentality, mental. This is a much more complex one. Again, I listen and read to all sorts of people. Today I had Dr. Gemma King, who's talking here tomorrow. She was on my podcast at the studios, and we talked about all sorts of things related to the brain and how we think and operate and etc. And my mental state can get fatigued quite easily. So I do 2 podcasts a week. I did Dominic Perrottet, I did Gemma this morning, I did a couple of other podcasts during the week. This week I might have done 4 podcasts. And I'm doing this for you today. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done these things, but for me, something like this is quite exhausting. Why it's exhausting? Because I give everything. Like I put a lot of emotion into it. It's not so much the preparation, but it's giving you what I can. It drains you. So for me, I want to be able to do the best performance I possibly can in a mental state, in a mentality state. I don't want to go home stuffed. I don't want to wake up feeling tired in the morning mentally. So I make sure that I engage myself in as many exercises as I possibly can. For example, I meditate. I meditate every day. Every day. I try all different forms of meditation. I do box breathing sometimes. Not every day can I do it properly. Sometimes I'm completely distracted. Like this week has been a particular example of that because my business is Yellow Brick Road, we're in the financial markets, and there's a lot of shit going on at the moment. You probably saw it. We've got a European banks in trouble at the moment, a massive one, and there's a couple of US banks in the same situation. Those things, they come to the shores here in Australia. My market starts to react and get very nervous. So I've been quite distracted by that, but I actually don't mind that because it actually tests me in my meditation to see whether or not I can overcome those things that are distracting me. And when they do distract me, I don't immediately go, I'll give up. I keep trying and trying and trying, and then I start to ask myself questions. Again, I am curious to learn about myself. What doesn't work for me? Mark, why is that upsetting your rhythm? And when I do that, I find myself and put myself in a position that I can actually start to make proper decisions about why I'm not meditating properly, and then ultimately I meditate properly. In terms of my mental health, from a mental health point of view, I surround myself with good quality people. Now, my mentor podcast, my Straight Talk podcast, there's no one in that business who's over the age of probably 26. Now, that's really important to me. Young people, you may have heard it before, give me, an older guy, a hell of a lot of energy. Their energy, their lightheartedness, their banter, their thinking, their thought processes and their consciousness, what makes them think and what are they thinking about, is energizing in that it is new to me. I see new things. So I think in terms of mental health, exposing yourself to new things is quite a good remedy to someone like me who lives in a world which is very stodgy, where I deal with the same people who have the same skills, who are trying to achieve the same outcomes for 40 years, in my case, 47 years. And it's sort of not boring, but it's boring. And the Mentor podcast gives me amazing an amazing outlet. And the Straight Talk podcast does too, an amazing outlet. Not only my staff who give me energy, and as I said earlier, they expose me to all sorts of things. Like they told me about my shoe game. You've got to get your shoe game right, Mark. Like I wore shitty shoes, and then I remember Jono, who was out the back there with the camera, probably looking at me right now. In fact, he's got mic on me. Jono told me about a thing called Common Projects. I'm rocking them today, guys. Common Projects. For you. I don't normally wear them, I only wear them on special occasions. But it's important for me to learn these things because I start to learn about the social environment. So surrounding yourself with different people. Reading. In my case, reading things that are completely different to what I do. It's a form of escapism. Now, I don't read fiction, but I don't read documentaries either. I read books about science, maths, chemistry, physics. Sounds weird, but I do it because it is completely different to the world I live in. And I love ChatGPT at the moment because I'm playing with ChatGPT and I'm starting to say to ChatGPT, well, I've read all my books that are normally sit by my bed. I don't always read everything. I'll read half a book, then I'll pick another one, start another one, I'll read half of that, and then I'll pick back the other one. I just keep changing in between, playing around, usually the same sort of topics though. But I've worked out now with ChatGPT, because the problem is when you read someone else's writing their book, you've got to read what they want to write. You've got to read it. And you're trying to flick through, find the important bits, the part that interests you. And a bit like podcasts, you can go through a timestamp of podcast, pick the section you want to look at, don't look at the rest. So, but books you can't. You can look at the chapter headings, that's about it. So what I've worked out with ChatGPT, again through curiosity and playing around with it, is that I can ask ChatGPT a question. I might say to ChatGPT, why does hydrogen only have, why is hydrogen an unstable atom, an atom of hydrogen, an unstable atom? And it might tell me something, it'll tell me, it'll say, well, atom of hydrogen's got one electron on the outer circle, and it wants to get two, therefore it's always trying to reach stability, therefore it's going to try and find something where it can borrow an electron and one electron on the outer shell, and it means it's got one proton and neutron in the nucleus. But then that'll tell me the answer. But then I'll say, okay, that's cool. But then why does hydrogen choose to team up with oxygen to make water? And why is oxygen is not O1 but is always O2? So there's two atoms of oxygen that we breathe, O2. And then ChatGPT takes me through this process. And what I do is I sort of manipulate, a bit like I did when I went to see the psychiatrist, but I manipulate ChatGPT to help me learn about what I want to learn. So what I'm trying to say here is build efficiency to satisfy your curiosity in what you want to learn about to get an outcome. Do I learn chemistry because I want to become a chemist, or I want to, do a Breaking Bad episode or something like that? No. I do it just to learn. Simple, just to learn. And I do it to stimulate neurologically what's going on in my brain. And I do it to develop and open up and create neurons in my brain that I wouldn't otherwise do if I wasn't reading these things. So I am deep diving into the way my brain works. And I do it on purpose. I'm purposeful about this stuff. So it's very important. And it's about me being, when I'm 90 and 95 and 100, that I can mentally, with acuity, talk about topics, and I can grasp what I'm being asked about, and I can actually interact with those people who I love, who I want to interact with. Mental. The final one, spirituality. I talked about meditation. For me, spirituality is not necessarily faith, but it sort of does include faith, because I grew up, my mother was Irish, so I'm a Catholic. I had no choice. And I went to Catholic schools, and I did all that stuff. So I understand the faith. I've read the Bible, read the New Testament many, many, many times over. More out of curiosity than anything, but I read it because I was trying to find, different, how Mark dealt with Matthew, dealt with the stories different to Matthew, and how they wrote differently. I was just interested in that sort of stuff. But I'm more interested in, I go about my life now in a spiritual sense in trying to understand what is important to me in my spirit. And for me, it's nature. The most important spirituality for me is nature. Now, that's not in here, that's outside, in a forest or something like that. And when I was talking to Dr. Jen McKinn this morning, she asked me a question. She said, "What do you do when you get stressed?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I do, and I'll share it with you. I haven't done it for a while, but I used to do it quite a lot. If I get anxious or stressed about business and stuff like that, what I used to do is I would wait until the middle of the night, midnight. Then I would get dressed, and I'd get out of bed. I'd get out of bed, get dressed, and those days, particularly those days, I lived across the road from the Botanical Gardens. So I lived in Macquarie Street. I would go downstairs, walk across Botanical Gardens, which is locked at 7 p.m. I found a spot where you could sneak in through the fence, and I'd go into the gardens. I particularly liked it when it was no moon, when it was pitch black. And I would walk around, and I used to do it all the time. My partner at the time, she thought I was mental. But I would walk around the gardens on purpose, looking for scary stuff. Now, I love nature. So that part was really good. I could smell the grass, I could smell things, I could sort of see things, I could touch stuff. But why I did it is because, and the doctor diagnosed me this morning, she gave me an answer for this. She said this: when you're anxious, something's going on in your brain, maybe your amygdala or one of those parts of your brain, cortisol's flowing through your bloodstream, your prefrontal cortex is not working because your decision-making center's not working, you're in a fight or flight, you don't know what to do. I unwittingly put myself in a position where, she said, where I should be scared. So I was able to transfer that anxiety across to something that was real, actually walking through a scary park. And as a result of that, I was able to, that was always healing for me, always healed me. So for me, my two things, spiritual things, two things is one, nature, the power of nature, and trying to understand how important that is for me personally. And then finally, and I'm out of time, but finally, it's music. Music is the most calming thing for me. So if I'm angry, I used to have anger issues when I was younger. If I'm angry, music stabilises me, disarms me completely. I have music going on in my home 24 hours a day. I never turn the radio off. So at night, I turn ABC Classics on the radio. It's not, it's a different array. It's a beautiful Bang & Olufsen system, but it doesn't matter. And it beams music throughout the house, except my bedroom. So if I go take a pee, I can hear it walking down the hall. It calms me. And during the day, I have jazz on all day. So jazz in the morning, classics at night. I was a musician. I did music for my HSC. I was a pianist. And my mother comes from a musical family, as you'd expect, Irish. So they all love a sing song. And to me, they are both spiritual things, music and nature. I ask the question, is there a God and is there a greater being? Is there a purpose that we are actually here outside of the things we're doing today and we do every other day and my 100th birthday and all that sort of stuff? Is there something other than all that? I don't know the answer to that. No one's ever going to know that. Do I want to believe? Well, if I don't know, I don't necessarily want to believe. I'm not that interested in believing something I don't know. But it may well be that is the case. And I also take the view that if I'm a good person and I live a right life with a right purpose and I don't go off and hurt people like perhaps I might have done unwittingly when I was younger, and live my life the way I live today, then I am being the best version of myself, and that's how I stay at the top of my game. Thanks very much.